What if Star Wars never existed? Imagine a world without lightsabers, without the Force. No Jedi, Sith Lords, or swashbuckling smugglers. No Rebel Alliance, and no Galactic Empire. What does that world look like? Where the absence of Star Wars has created cosmic ripples that will alter the course of history in ways you can't even imagine. From the moment that Imperial Star Destroyer rumbled across the top of the screen in Star Wars' opening scene, it became clear the visual effects were light years ahead of anything audiences had ever seen. Before Star Wars, the last real sci-fi film was 2001: A Space Odyssey, which came out nearly a decade before. It had long takes and slow editing. Lucas, however, wanted fast kinetic cuts and dynamic camera movement. But there was one major problem. There were no effects houses that could do that.
Got him! I got him! Great kid! Don't get cocky!
In order to make this movie, Lucas was going to have to build his own effects house from the ground up. So, in comes John Dykstra and a secret gang of outsiders who were experts in effects. Lucas appropriately named the company Industrial Light and Magic. At a time when the personal computer was still years away, the ILM crew hand-built custom hardware to operate their own original system, which they called the Dykstraflex. Using a mechanical system which was operated by a computer, they could move the motion control camera on an exact path specified to the fraction of an inch, which means they could shoot exact duplicate passes with multiple different elements captured separately and then optically composite them for a seamless VFX shot. This moment in time is so crucial to the future of cinema. If Star Wars was never made, and let's say for the sake of this argument, Lucas wasn't even a filmmaker at all, then ILM would never have been founded, which means the motion control cameras wouldn't exist either. This technique and ILM were crucial to the visual effects of the 1980s. Without them, we would not have films like E.T. or Back to the Future.
Erase from existence.
But I have a theory that goes beyond the technology and even beyond the filmmaking itself. My theory lies within a friendship, a cosmic bond between two creative visionaries. I'm talking, of course, about the kinship between Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. So, imagine Lucas had never joined the ranks of the movie brats alongside Spielberg, Scorsese, Coppola, and De Palma. If he never hit it off with Spielberg, sparking a creative flame between the duo that was both supportive and competitive, then I wonder if we would even have Steven Spielberg as we know him today. Sure, he would have gone on to be a great director, but without that friendly competitive drive from Lucas, just how different would Spielberg's trajectory have been? The movie industry would have carried on with the gritty films of the 1970s. Since Lucas wasn't there to pave the way for sci-fi, the science fiction boom of the 80s never happened. Films like Alien and Blade Runner don't exist. Instead, sci-fi is known as either B-movies or the harder to access grown-up sci-fi like 2001. We are now living in a world without Goonies or Gremlins, and most definitely a world without Indiana Jones. Because while Spielberg may have directed it, Raiders of the Lost Ark was Lucas's idea after all. Without Star Wars paving the way for franchise filmmaking, something like Indiana Jones likely wouldn't have existed anyway. In this world, we don't have the Lord of the Rings or Matrix trilogies, and even if we did, the question remains, would the visual effects industry have caught up enough to achieve those films when they did? Because without ILM, there is no CGI. Or at the very least, it's invented much later. The digital revolution was the most groundbreaking thing to happen to movies in 100 years, and ILM was at the forefront. They literally invented new tools and technology to create the first CG shots ever made, like the water creature in the abyss, and the liquid metal effects of Terminator 2. Something many people may not realize is this is actually where Photoshop was invented as well.
Boom, Photoshop.
They pioneered the program and used it for the first time in The Abyss to stitch together photos from every angle on set in order to create the reflections in the water. But what's even harder to imagine is the fact that James Cameron literally quit his job as a truck driver after seeing Star Wars in his early 20s and then began pursuing a career in film.
Get out.
This means we don't have Cameron as a filmmaker at all in this universe. Without James Cameron, not only would the world be deprived of his movies like Titanic and Avatar, but we also would not have the groundbreaking technology he's played a pivotal role in pioneering. From creating digital worlds on screen and the amazing performance capture technology that comes with it, to assembling the engineers and scientists that develop a new type of submersible to explore the depths of the oceans. The ripple effect that Star Wars and George Lucas has had on the world is truly mind-blowing. To tell you the truth, without George Lucas pioneering digital editing, I'm not even sure I'd have a way to edit this video right now. So if ILM wasn't pushing the boundaries of CG, and if Spielberg had not had that competitive friendship with Lucas, then we may very well have also missed out on Spielberg's later films like Jurassic Park. I don't even want to imagine a world without Jurassic Park, but let's at least look back at what it took to bring to life a movie that was 65 million years in the making. It was in the electrifying halls of industrial light and magic, amidst the chaos of wires and the hum of computers, where we would find a group of rebellious CG artists that would change the world forever. Spielberg had already made plans to shoot the movie using animatronics and stop-motion animation. Phil Tippett and Stan Winston would be heading that up, and they'd bring on Dennis Muren and ILM to apply motion blur to the animation in a process called Go Motion to try and make it look more realistic. But Mark Tappé and Spaz Williams took it upon themselves to sneak around after hours to try and create the first lifelike digital dinosaur. They started by 3D modeling the skeleton of a T-Rex and then animated it walking.
So I built these set of bones, I had to walk, and I knew I was not going to be allowed to show it.
So they basically planned an ambush.
Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall were coming up, and I knew they were coming up on a Monday in November of 1991.
Mark and Spaz had their animated walking dino bones playing on a monitor in the room she walked into, and they just waited for her to notice.
And the whole deal changed.
Well, of course, she was instantly impressed, and because they believed in their process and believed in themselves and took a chance on showing this rough mock-up to the higher-ups without even having permission, well, the rest is history. From that point on, they were working officially on making something to show Spielberg to get his approval to move in this new CG direction for Jurassic Park. This meant more than just bones. It meant living, breathing, sweating, muscle and skin. And they chose to put the Rex in broad daylight.
Let's just have this locked off camera, this big T-Rex walking toward us with kind of a wide angle lens. We're not hiding anything.
Because I wasn't completely convinced until I saw a fleshed dinosaur outside in the worst harsh sunlight.
Because ultimately, this was the test of all tests. They needed to know that they can achieve this for the entire major motion picture. And when Spielberg finally saw it, there it was, in all its glory, a fully rendered, walking T-Rex.
I had a kind of religious experience. That was the moment that I suddenly saw that everything was going to change. The entire world was going to follow in the footsteps of ILM, and we were never going to go back.
The revolutionary CGI of Jurassic Park opened the doors for filmmakers to be able to create virtually anything. Without Jurassic Park, we would most certainly not have visual effects films from the 90s like Contact, Independence Day, The Fifth Element, and even Forrest Gump. Not to mention, without that CG explosion in the 90s, there's no way we would be where we are today with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the mind-bending effects of films like Gravity or Harry Potter. And to think all of this began with a spark ignited by George Lucas and his space opera in a galaxy far, far away. But it's not just live-action movies that we would be missing. For instance, did you know ILM is actually where Pixar began? Lucas was using it to research visual effects for his films, but eventually realized the potential was there for animated films as well. This, however, was not where his passion was, so he sold Pixar to Steve Jobs in 1986. Under Jobs' leadership, Pixar shifted its focus to creating computer-animated commercials and short films while continuing to develop its technology. Eventually, Pixar produced its first feature-length computer-animated film,
To infinity and beyond, Toy Story,
in 1995, which was a massive success and launched Pixar as a powerhouse in the animation industry. So imagine a world without Woody and Buzz. In this world, there's no Nemo, no Wall-E, no Lightning McQueen. Without Star Wars, there is no Pixar, and thus the wonder of childhood is forever altered. Not only are we missing out on Spielberg and Lucas's childhood adventure films of the 80s and 90s, but now the world is devoid of Pixar's magical touch as well.
Here's the new Star Wars X-Wing Fighter and the Star Wars TIE Fighter. Spaceships and Luke Skywalker sold separately.
Another place where Star Wars paved the way was in merchandising. It was a very wise decision on George Lucas's part to sacrifice a $500,000 directing fee from 20th Century Fox in order to keep the rights to licensing and merchandising for the Star Wars franchise. The massive return on investment Lucas saw pioneered the way studios handled merchandising rights for future blockbusters. Star Wars still holds the Guinness World Record for the most successful film merchandising franchise in history at a whopping $32 billion. In a world without Star Wars, we would lose more than just a beloved film franchise. We would lose a cultural phenomenon that has inspired generations, ignited imaginations, and brought people together from all walks of life. From its iconic characters and thrilling adventures to its timeless themes of hope, redemption, and the power of good over evil, Star Wars has left an indelible mark on our collective consciousness, and I think truly we're all the better for it. But perhaps most importantly, without Star Wars, we would miss out on the sense of wonder and magic that it's brought into our lives. We would miss the joy of embarking on epic adventures and the comfort of knowing that no matter where we are or what challenges we face, the Force will always be with us.